Hello, today is April 12th, and today we're going to be reading our gospel not for this Sunday, but for this Thursday. This week is Holy Week, the week before Easter, and this Thursday is Maundy Thursday. And so we will be having here at Grace a communion service on Maundy Thursday, and a full reflective service to help us uh, turn and reflect on the ending of this Lenten season and looking forward, preparing our hearts for the coming of the resurrection on Easter Sunday. But we're going to start with our gospel. And our gospel for this Thursday comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 1 through 17, and 31 through 35. Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash, except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me. And as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. This command that Jesus gives at the end of what we call the Last Supper, the end of his final meal with his disciples, at the end of their celebration of the Passover, it's not necessarily a new command, or rather, the command to love is not a new command. Now, that shouldn't be too surprising, I hope. Jesus has previously said, in other Gospels, of course, but the command to love is something that's clearly in Jesus's mind. The command towards a faith or an expression of faith that wasn't geared solely towards obedience to the law as the law, but rather living the law as an expression of love. And that's something that I think permeates all of Jesus's ministry, that is core to Jesus's teaching, to Jesus's living out of his message, is that for Jesus, love is not simply telling others that they have to do right. It is showing others in real, meaningful ways that you love them. Jesus, we have on Maundy Thursday, though, is marked out as a special reminder. And the teaching Jesus gives in John during the Last Supper is the longest explication of that Last Supper. And it is a command. That's why we call it Maundy Thursday. It is comes from the Latin of mandate, to the commandment, the instruction, the teaching. This is a teaching meal. And so Jesus wasn't coming up with something new when he focused on love as a centerpiece of his ministry. This is in Deuteronomy. This is the teaching that Jesus quotes to the Pharisees when they ask him what the most important law is. He quotes to them one of the core verses in Deuteronomy, what he says, on which the whole law hangs. That is to love your God with all your heart and mind and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That is the heart of what Jesus says is the good law. It's the only good law. It's the law to which all the other laws have to bend. And so if Jesus puts that law at the top of the list of what is already in Torah, then what is Jesus doing here? What is the new thing that Jesus is adding to that commandment? Because Jesus clearly has not been innovating when he quotes from Deuteronomy. He generally has not been innovating when he instructs people to be merciful or to give to the poor or to abstain from judgment because God alone is judge. All of these things are simply expressions of Torah. These are not new, these are not innovative teachings. They are expressions that might have been sharp reminders to the Pharisees at the time, but they are not new. So what's new here? What is new? What is distinctive about this teaching? Jesus is not just commanding them to love. Jesus is not simply commanding them to live the law as he had already expressed it, to love their neighbor as themselves. Instead, we turn to this John 34. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. And that's a different kind of love. That's a different kind of love than even loving your neighbor as yourself. Loving your neighbor as yourself is hard enough, is demanding enough, but to love God, to love one another as Jesus has loved us, it's a self-sacrificial love. Jesus knows where he is headed. Jesus knows that this journey that he's been on will only ever end on a cross for the sake of the disciples which he loves. That is the love that Jesus expresses. That is how he has loved the disciples. The foot washing, the bathing of the disciples' feet. It's not, Jesus makes it clear, this is not a sign that he is their master, but instead he is saying, I am taking the role of the servant. You know who I am. I have been your rabbi. I have been your teacher, your spiritual master. And yet, here I am washing your feet. That's the example you are to follow. And so, reading that, knowing that is knowing that we are to love one another is one thing. But taking seriously Jesus's command that not only are we to love one another, but in fact we are to live out to the extreme that Christ has loved us, to love one another to that extent, to be the servant of one another, to be willing to lay down our lives, to lay down our lives either in service or to the point of the cross for each other is an extreme kind of self-giving love that is not expressed elsewhere in Torah. This is not a practical instruction. This is not a means of improving your life. This is not a way to self-actualize. In fact, in some sense, it is a negation of yourself. It is a setting aside of the ego. It is a setting aside of our better interests totally for the sake of the other. And that should be a scandalous and shocking thing. Jesus is asking for a total love for others. Jesus sets an example of total, entire love for others. And that is, at once, if we can realize that, if we can even glimpse it, however imperfectly, that is a wondrous picture of love. If we can even begin to approach it, that is a testament to what the saving power of Christ really is. That is, in the power to enable us to love one another in this extreme and amazing way. That is what the Spirit can do in our lives, can fill us with the ability to even approach or even consider loving as Christ has loved us first. That's the life of a Christian disciple. The person who is willing even to start down this path of total and complete self-giving and self-sacrificial love. That is the new teaching that Jesus gives. And that is the sign by which people will know that we are, in fact, followers of Jesus, by our willingness to love others to the point which Jesus loved us first. That is the message of Maundy Thursday, and that is the message of Easter. I hope you are having a good Holy Week. Hope you're staying safe and healthy and enjoying our sunshine. Okay, have a good week. Bye-bye.